Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Philip Reason on behalf of the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing our webinar series, and this month is all about Women's History Month. And so today we're having a conversation with two phenomenal women about building growth and leaving a legacy, and have had programming at the top of the month, have some more coming up, but really excited for this morning's conversation. And so I want to bring in today's moderator, Antoine Ford, the president of the chamber, to sort of carry us through the webinar. Antoine?
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate you today, and welcome to another massive event in our series. And I'm going to get out the way quickly and let our great guests really talk about themselves here. I'll introduce both of them, and then I'll have Lisa start. Brief explanation, and they'll tell you more about themselves. So Lisa Anderson is a founder and CEO of Inova Transformational Solution. Knows firsthand the difficulties and challenges of scaling a business. Lisa grew her business from a startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise, something that, and I love this statistic, Lisa, when I was researching, less than 1.2% of women entrepreneurs in the US can claim. And that's one, incredible, and that's two, that's a shame. And I love what you're doing about this. She'll tell you more about herself. One thing I will tell you guys, I will admit it, Lisa and I have been friends since high school. So it is proven that friends can still work together, because I was definitely a client of hers and still will be, in terms of her really helped me understand streamlining my business from a financial perspective. We also have Amy Griffin, another dear friend. I call her Attorney Amy Griffin, managing attorney of the Griffin firm. Amy is a business and estate planning attorney licensed in Massachusetts, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. Amy was recognized by the Small Business Administration as Massachusetts and New England Small Business Champion. Amy works to build businesses for profitability, and she has an amazing story. One thing I will tell you personally with her is she helped me understand that women speak spaghetti and men speak waffles. She'll tell you about that later, but I really want to jump into this. Lisa's going to go first. You'll see why we brought these great women together. So I'll turn it over to Lisa, and you can talk about your organization and then take it from here.
Yeah, thank you, Antoine. I appreciate you inviting me to speak this morning on such a very, very important topic. And yeah, we've known each other for a really long time. So it is wonderful to be able to step into a space like this, to say that you not only have a friendship for over 30 years, but you also have business relationships for almost as long as well. And so I appreciate your relationship. As Antoine said, I am president and CEO of Inova Transformation Solutions, where I serve as a strategic business advisor and a virtual CFO to professional service-based companies who are interested in scaling their way to legacy. This is my fifth business. I currently own and operate three simultaneously. My first business was a full outsource accounting and compliance company, where we served federal government contractors to help them build financial systems, financial reporting, so that they remain compliant with the contracts that they were acquiring and continuing to maintain. And we did that full outsource service for 20 years. On our 20-year anniversary, I actually sold the business and started to really dig deeper into the organizational development concepts of helping businesses scale. When we did a lot of the work associated with the day-to-day accounting and compliance work, a lot of what we did was the day-to-day operations. And we can see from the saying goes, if you want to know what's happening inside of a business, ask the accountant. And it's true. You can ask the accountant anything and they can tell you everything. I had a conversation with some ladies last night, and they said the accountant knows where the bodies are buried, and we absolutely do. We know everything about the business. And so we saw inner workings of what was happening with organizations, but we also saw where the businesses needed the direct support and the mindset, the mind shift of the owner in order for the business to get to another level. And so we kind of shifted to really work more intimately with business owners to help them establish the changes in their mindset to shift and prepare to scale their businesses. And so what we recognize is that scaling is a decision. Scaling is an intention. Scaling is not something that's going to happen overnight. Leading your way to legacy is not something that's going to happen overnight. It doesn't happen instantaneously. You have to build your way through that process from day one. And if we learn anything from the experiences that we're having right now as a result of the pandemic, we are walking away knowing that life is too short, that nothing lasts forever, and that we do really have to think about and operate with the end in mind. We have to understand why we're in this thing, why are we building this thing. You know, when we look at the foundations of why organizations or individuals start their businesses, one of the key reasons is that they want freedom and they want flexibility. They want financial freedom. But when you look at the inner workings of a small business in particular, and then women-owned businesses, essentially, when you look at the statistics, the average small and women-owned business is really just working their way through, you know, having a job that they own themselves versus building the asset that the business is designed to be, to start to really create that freedom and that flexibility and the wealth that should come at the end. So one of the reasons why you want to think about scaling and growing and getting beyond the plateau of wherever you are, you want to do those things so that at the end of the road, you are walking away from, you know, your exit strategy from your business is that you're able to walk away with a return on investment that gives value to you and your family beyond, you know, for years to come, right? Beyond the current point, moment in time. You want to make certain that you've built that return on investment, that the business is that asset that has equity and cash flow. And you've had the opportunity to invest in other things to help to build that wealth. And so what we do now as an organization is we work directly with CEOs to help them make the transition from consultancy to CEO, to ultimately chairman of the board or chairwoman of the board, and start really building value in business. I bring my experience as a CFO, as a CPA and a CFO to the table, my experience as a government contracts expert. If you can serve at the highest level, the highest tier industry and market here, you know, in the United States, and you can serve any place. And so we bring that experience to the table. And then my experience as an executive coach, I bring those things to the table to help really foster growth from the inside out. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do. And I'm going to hand it back over to you, Antoine.
Thank you so much. So I'm really gonna have a good conversation going, but Amy, if you can jump in a little bit about that and talk about legacy, because at the end of the day, what Lisa's trying to do feeds what you're trying to do. And so I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into some conversation.
Thank you, Antoine. And I'm really obviously pleased and honored to have this conversation. And I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit of my story. I was living in Massachusetts. I'm a native Massachusetts babe. And I was working for a state agency, and I was overseeing contracting and procurement. And for those of y'all who have not been to Massachusetts, the complexity is significantly different. And so, but what I realized as overseeing contracting and procurement is that Black folks weren't going to have access, didn't have access. Nobody in the background was saying, Amy, don't give contracts to these folks. But you could see how the systems were created and supported such that folks who look like me didn't get access. And I realized that you can't win the game if you don't know the rules. So at 40, I went to law school. At 40, I said, I got to win the game, got to help people win the game. I really had no intention of practicing law. It was, how do I get this community resource out? And so after graduating from law school, I created the New England Black Chamber of Commerce, which got me into the system of the Black Chamber and was a part of creating what is now the U.S. Black Chambers. So in so doing, I was working with Black businesses, helping them to scale, to become businesses that created jobs for people. And what I realized is that when a business owner died, there wasn't a plan in place. And so the wealth that they had created for themselves and for their employees was often lost. And so I went back to law school to get more, debt, and to get my Master of Laws in Estate Planning. And so as such, I was able to not just support people through entrepreneurship, business development stuff, but to how do we create and how to protect wealth and pass it on for multiple generations, right? And so God delivered me from Massachusetts and brought me to the DMV. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. And as a child of civil rights advocates, I've been always mindful of the racial wealth gap, right? And so being ever thoughtful about the fact that there is a racial wage gap. So statistically, white folks make more than we do similarly situated. If we got the same credentials, but oftentimes we still get paid less. Oftentimes we have to pay more for the money that we borrow for mortgages. What we know is the whole redlining world. We know that the life insurance companies have often and legally overcharged us, gave us a black surcharge. And so our life insurance, which enabled us to pass on to our children and our children's children, were taxed. They oftentimes weren't even able to sell us life insurance that would give a platform for our children's children. They gave us death insurance because our life wasn't worth much in their eyes. So one of the things that we have encouraged people to be a part of is planning not just their estate plan. Now, mind you, Black folks, 30% of Black people have an estate plan. And that means 70% do not. And I will say to you that I ask people all the time, do you have a will with a joke? Because knowing that if you don't write one for yourself, your state, your commonwealth, your district will write one for you. And it's built on their rules, built on their formulas, built on their values. So if you want something to reflect how you want your family to be able to use those assets and resources, you got to make the plan for yourself. Estate planning answers 3 questions. What happens when you die, which is why people don't want to talk about it. But we also need to talk about what happens if I'm incapacitated. Who will manage my stuff for me, making sure that it goes for my best interest and or my kids' kids. And thirdly, what's the legacy that you want to leave? So we know that we get to make some decisions, but only if we make the decisions. If we don't make the decisions for ourselves strategically, it's defaulted. And somebody overseen by the county, the government, the district, or the commonwealth will make the decisions. We say at the Griffin firm, which in light of the Women's Month, I want to announce the fact that the Griffin firm is an all-Black women law firm. It is amazing. So we are committed to your estate. We're yourestateplanningattorney.com, but we are an all-Black women firm. But one of the things that I realized, and I said as I've been working with people to build their estate plans, is I can write the best estate plan. However, if you have $47.50, that's not plan. You don't need to plan that much, right? And so one of the revelations that I had was that if we are thoughtful, and I can have a deep, narrow focus on estate planning, but work with people like Lisa, financial advisors, insurance people, to have the collaborative approach to estate planning and to building a legacy, we can bridge the racial wealth gap. I had been so mindful about that, so focused about that. We can't do this stuff together. The National Bar Association, the Justice Connection, our Black law firm, Black legal organizations bringing attorneys together. The Quad-A's, the African American Financial Advisors Association, and then we have the National African American Insurance Association, National Bankers Association. But we've got to come together to work collaboratively. As a result, I'm blessed to have been given the opportunity to create the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals. We know that better we're together. Together we are better. But if indeed we are able to all think and come together and talk about the racial wealth gap, let's work together. I don't necessarily want to be able to sell you a house or buy a house for you, but we know that real estate is the #1 foundation of wealth building for our Black communities. If we are able to pass on a house to our children, better yet to our grandchildren, because the scripture says leave an inheritance for your children's children. In so doing, if we are able to strategically build for our community, we're able to create wealth that with high tide, all boats rise. So let's be thoughtful about how do we work together. ABEP, with the Association of Black State Planning Professionals, works together to build the capacity so that when we know that we are working together with people who are like-minded. Now, it's not, as we know, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So we need to make sure that we are working with people who have our community's best interest in mind. We can't be working with those folks who are just trying to say, God bless us for no more. We know that strong families make strong communities. So we encourage folks to let's join together so, again, we can create a movement on strong economic empowerment. We can create a movement on building wealth that's not just for me, but for our community. Thank you.
Well, I absolutely love it in terms of what we're doing here. I want to start a question, Lisa, for you in terms of, before I go there, what's your reaction to what you've heard for what Amy does? Because I'm looking at the folks that you talk to all the time. What's your reaction to that? Because I know you talk about that.
Yeah. So, I wrote down a lot as Amy was talking. And quite frankly, I think at the end of the day, there's two things. Number one is planning. Number two is capacity building. Too often we operate with by the seat of our pants. We operate and respond or react to circumstances that are occurring. Although we have dreams, we have objectives, we have goals, on a day-to-day basis, we are functioning based upon what is happening here and now. But the reality is we have to plan. We have to plan, we have to build capacity, and we have to be prepared for that end in mind. You and I joke a lot, Antoine, about the fact that, many, many years ago, you asked me that mind-blowing question. And at that time, I had been in business for maybe about 5 or 6 years, and you had just started. Mm-hmm. You were larger than I was at that point in time. And you asked me, that one question, which is, what's your exit strategy? And it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, exit strategy? I'm just getting started in this thing and I want to be in this thing forever. But what that did is it made me stop and think, and I'm sorry, the next thing you said was, are you building a lifestyle business? And I was a little appalled when you asked me that question. I was like, yeah, I'm building a lifestyle business. The business should be all about my lifestyle, but really it's not. It's really, it can be just that if you stop there. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking to build something that is going to be of value to help your children's children, to be of value to you when you retire, to provide that return on investment, you've got to build beyond lifestyle. And building beyond lifestyle means that you've got to plan today, you've got to execute today, you've got to get back to your exit strategy on a regular basis. Even if you only are starting with a meager beginning, you want to start putting some things in place so that you can start to increase and expand that over time. I did that in my business. From the day that we had that conversation, I shifted. I changed my business from being a consultancy to building a professional services firm. And that's the only reason why, honestly, you changed my mindset to help me step into, achieving 7 figures and beyond. And once I started to do that, the world of opportunities opened up for me. I bought my mother a house. I bought my mother a car, paid cash for it. I put my kids through college with no debt. I sold a business. I have maxed out on my retirement. I've invested in real estate. I invest in the stocks in the stock market. I'm doing a lot of things to increase my value and my wealth, wealth beyond myself. That's going to help to continue to, serve and support my family for generations, because of the one question that you asked me, because of planning and because of capacity building. And it's all strategy. It won't just happen. I see far too many business owners. You've asked me to come in and help you do due diligence, through some acquisition processes. And so have other clients asked me to do the same thing. And when I do due diligence, I look at companies who are ready to exit, but they haven't built the value that they want to get out of the business. And when we give them the answer to the question, okay, so here's your offer based upon our due diligence, they're facing a truth that a reality that they're shocked to receive, that the business doesn't have any value, or at least not what they're asking for. And they're at least 7 to 10 years away from rebuilding the business to get the value that they want out of it. And so you've got to start today. You got to build legacy now.
Amy, jump in. I saw you looking like you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, because Antoine had the same impact on me, and that's what, when I moved to DC, praise the Lord, I came with a nice good job, and within a year, the job and the CEO, were gone, and so I created my job initially based on I needed a job. And then I realized moving from surviving to thriving is something that we each need to be mindful of. It's like, okay, great. I know I'm going to live indoors and eat regularly now, but how do we create that legacy builder, right? How do we plan for it? And the Griffin firm, we talk about the 5 Ds of business succession planning: death, disability, divorce, death, disability, divorce, all of a sudden, dissolution and departure, right? So we need to be thinking about those 5 Ds, putting those things in place so that when we walk away proudly. But again, we have to have the systems in place. And that begins with having the end in mind, having a vision. And so often, if we're just surviving, without vision, our people perish. We got to build our vision. We've got to be able to, like I tell people, start off with the vision that you think you can do, and then ask what God can do, right? And so that we know it is so much greater than we have. Because if it's something I can do by myself, I don't need support. But it's something that we're creating for our children's children and our community. And when I say our children's children, it's not just biological.
There we go. I like that.
It's got to be community too. And so as we're thinking about how do I impact, because what we know is the last president might have been thinking about his children's children, but the heck with the rest of the community, so we got to be thinking about
his children's children.
I'll try and give him some credit somewhere, but we got to be thinking broadly, and I think as civil rights. As a child of civil rights leaders, I've always been thinking, I can't prosper if my community doesn't prosper. How do we rise up together?
I mean, you guys, it's interesting. You guys are talking about mindset changes, right? So each question, I want you guys to react to this. So Lisa, I want you to react to this one. In terms of you trying to get businesses to think 7 figures, just to move from a job mentality to a thrive mentality, to move from just creating a job, what's the biggest challenge you find in changing the way people think? And then Amy, same question for you when talking about leaving legacies and thinking about, the concept of, wait a minute, I got to now think about, and this is the hardest thing I got to think about my death. And I was like, Amy, I don't want to do this. She said, you better be able to do this. But it was hard. So Lisa, how do you help people change their mindset? Yeah.
So mindset, we know for certain that mindset is at the core of growth, period. And so in order to make the shift from, where you are now to, thinking bigger, growing bigger, stepping into playing bigger, stepping into larger opportunities, we've got to change the mindset. So we actually focus in on that on a regular basis. It is the conversation that we're having. I don't work with companies where they just want me to produce a number and provide a report. If we're not having a conversation on a regular basis about what the numbers mean, about how these numbers tie into your overall goals and objectives, what is your legacy objective? If we're not having those conversations on a regular basis, then you're not a right fit to work with us. And so the mindset shifts happen through the conversation. And then certainly, I think the other thing that happens through the process is, and this is where executive coaching comes into play, is understanding that when people retreat, when they get quiet, when they go inside and they start to internalize and things start to shut down, that's when the breakdown starts to occur. And we start to go back to the places where we were most comfortable. And, a lot of that is because what we're moving towards is difficult. And it's difficult because we don't know all the answers. But that's why it's important to have a conversation with somebody on a regular regular basis, not just anybody, but somebody that has been where you are going and can help you see what's about to occur in the future and help you strategize around those things, to make certain that you have an A team in place. People like Amy, people like you, people like the Chamber of Commerce, other professionals that are going to help to support and elevate your initiatives and your objectives. Business growth, scaling a business, whether it is scaling up to grow or scaling back to get, to get back to the simplistic aspects of business, it's a team sport. You cannot do it alone. And so I know that when clients that I'm working with, you've been there because, you've been my client for a long time. When things get quiet, I'm stepping up, I'm calling. I'm like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, because I know that there's something that's going on in the mind, and we just need to talk it out. What's going on? Let's hash it out. Let's work our way through it. Let's have some black coffee conversation. Let's put it on the table and let's put some things into action. So we got to talk about it.
Amy, same thing on your side.
Changing the mindset. So that collaborative spirit, that collaborative mindset. Now, again, I don't know why I'm so scriptural today, but in the multitude of counsel, there is safety.
Come on now.
Right. So it is when we bring folks together where you are willing to be honest, vulnerable, and allow people to speak into your life, then we can grow. Right. And so that's the concept. It's like, we got to come together collectively. We operate in silos so much. Part of it is shame. Part of it is, we try to hide. But if we are allowing ourselves to be open, then we are challenged, folks will challenge us to grow. But we got to be in that space. And again, I say Black folks can make a movement out of anything. So let's make a movement on growing together.
Amy, let me follow that up.
Something really quickly.
Yeah, please.
To your point, I think it's even more important for women in particular, because, the way that we are wired and the way that we are designed, we suffer alone. We've been growing up, we've been told to be polite, only speak when you've been spoken to, that your job is to take care of the home, to care for the family, operate from the back end. But we've been really serving as the backbone of, raising the household and now raising the business. But we have to learn how to unlearn some of the things that we were taught when we grew up. My grandmother used to say all those things to me: get a job, get a good job, and stay there for years. I broke all those rules, every single one of them. I broke them. But we have to, in order to unlearn those things, we have to stay in community, conversation, and collaboration with others. We have to. And we have to get used to open our mouths. I mean, the truth of the matter is, closed mouths don't get fed. So you have to learn how to ask. You have to learn how to speak up. You have to learn how to command. You have to learn how to do all those things. And the only way that you can do those things is to have conversations with those who have done it. Be encouraged by those who are going through the process. So, we just have to unlearn some of the things that we've been raised to do, throughout our lives.
I mean, I love this. And so, Amy,
I'm sorry, Antoine, I can't let you go yet. I got to let you go.
No, this is for you. I was going to toss this to you because once she brought out, because there's such a difference for her perspective of what women is. I got to throw that right to you.
Absolutely. And not only do we need to take our time. So one of my greatest revelations is the coaches that I have are male, right? And I was sharing my calendar with my coach, and he said, well, when do you work out? I said, 6 a.m. He said, when do you do, this is on Saturday. He says, wait, no. Personal care is part of your day.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I have learned over the years, just like I know, like my grandma, they didn't sit down and eat with us. They made sure we were fed and ate later. Right. So often we don't even take the time to think about what's in our best interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
We take the time to think about, how do I make sure everybody else is taken care of, and then I'll take care of me.
Yeah.
One of my best examples of the sister who has a law firm. Every Wednesday, the massage therapist comes to her, and I'm like, you should see me. It's like Sunday at 2:00 if I can squeeze it. I go to the doctor on Saturday. But what we can do is first and foremost realize that we're more than conquerors, but we got to claim it and do it and be it, and not just by somebody else's definition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the struggles that we as women have, is because our definition of our greatness is after everybody else is fulfilled and fed. And then we can find those things that meet us. Right.
Wow.
Yep. That's one of the things that was a game changer for me, Amy, quite frankly, is putting myself on the calendar every day, often and frequently. So at the top of each year, I block out. Antoine jokes me about this, but I block my time out. My vacations are squared away. I put my days off each month on the calendar. I live and die by my calendar, literally. And if it doesn't exist on my calendar, it doesn't exist in my world. And so if I want to be true to me, this is why without me, all this other stuff that I have going on won't be. So if I don't put myself on the calendar first, then, I'm in trouble. But I commit to the calendar. So if I'm on the calendar, I am showing up for myself.
Wow. I mean, and it's funny. I love the direction that we're going into, particularly because we're talking about a lifestyle in both contexts, right? And so we have to think about this for the people that are listening and the people that are going to listen, because we're going to post this in multiple sites because this topic is so important. One of the things is sort of move forward. We have about 2.6 million Black-owned businesses in this country, and only about 124,000 have any employees. Any employees. 3 of them are here. So if you start to think about that, Amy, I'll start with you first. How do you, I'm going to switch this, Lisa, because I think it's going to feed Amy. Lisa, how can we think about legacy when we only think about having a job? 2.5 million Black-owned businesses have no employees. Yeah. Right. So what you're looking at is how do you get these guys to think about this so they can build? And Amy, I know this is one of your passions. Like, how do you even think about having a legacy if you have nothing to leave?
Yeah.
So Lisa, I kind of see, you guys are such natural partners here. How do we get them to think bigger than their nice little job, right? How do we get them to think about scaling?
Yeah. Well, we have to show them the pathway, quite frankly. When we think about how we learn, most of the time we're visual learners, right? We can read a book, we watch YouTube, and when we do those things, we can then put some things in action. So we have to educate. Just hiring people to do something for you is not educating you. You have to bring people in to help educate you. That's one of the game changers for my business. I have always been an educating professional. When I go in to help companies with their financials, I'm not just giving you a report. I am educating you on that. And through education comes insight. So you can start to create the pathway to show individuals and organizations how to start to build beyond where they are, to start thinking strategically about what my next move is going to be. We created a business growth framework that encompasses 5 steps that helps companies to scale, and then we go back and revisit them. So those 5 steps are to plan your vision. So you got to know what you want, where what you're targeting, short-term and long-term, to understand your numbers, because they are the drivers behind how you're going to get there, to leverage your resources. And you do this well, which is, tap into your network. A lot of times we're always looking outward to go find the opportunity, but guess what? We had all these years of experiences, which is a gift from God that he's provided to us, our career, the connections that we have. You have gold in those connections. So reach into go within and start growing your way outward, make those connections, scale your opportunities. This is how you start to build your team out, to build beyond, just being a solopreneur or just having 3 employees. It is to start to look at larger opportunities, start to, advance your reach. And then what does that look like? How do we get there? And then finally, just remembering that it's a team sport. So you got to engage a profitable team. Once you started to do those things and you go back and revisit the mission and keep going back through that process, Now we got a locomotion that is moving out of the station, and we're starting to build and build and build. And you get used to the process of coming backwards to revisit and going back through the process again. So it's education. I mean, stop hiring people just to do stuff. Bring people in that can really, really, really inform you, provide you with some insight, and educate you on what the next level looks like, so that now you see it and now you can do it.
Amy, how's that feed you, Amy?
So while I am co-signing everything Lisa said, right? But coming back to the point of people not having employees, they don't know their worth. People don't know their worth. And when I coach like law firms and lawyers who are solopreneurs and start off and they say, I do everything. I said, I'll never forget, a law professor said to me once, and not that he had to say it to me twice. He said, if you're the only employee, you're paying somebody $400 an hour to make copies. Right?
Wow.
Right. So
wow.
So you don't appreciate your worth and your value, because if I'm making copies, I'm not meeting with somebody that's taking opportunities. So what we've learned in law firms is, or any business, your value is here. Don't spend it doing something that you can pay somebody $20 an hour to do. Right. So if it's when you know your value, you're not willing to overpay for what you're doing. So when we start off with, because so often we don't pay ourselves, so we don't recognize the cost. But if you can start and say, okay, if this is not worth that $400 an hour, I'm not filing for $400 an hour, then you're compelled to find somebody who will do that, because it's not just paying somebody, it's costing you something else.
I think also too, where business owners get stuck is in the place of, I can't afford it. Right? They get stuck in the current situation, the current circumstance. I need the help. I know I need it. I know somebody else should be doing this, but I can't afford it. When can I start to bring somebody in? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, that's where education and insight come into play. When you start to, really dissect the financial components of your business, you can really start to see where you have some room to start to bring resources in, so that you're not paying $400 an hour to make those copies, that you're actually bringing somebody else in. Because when you start to elevate yourself, move yourself out of a certain place and let somebody else do that, you're building the capacity to start to bring in more revenue, more income. Because guess what? Now you're revenue facing, you're generating, you're out there making connections. You are doing the business building things, because you're not, overburdened with some of the other mundane aspects of business. But you can't see that for yourself. You start to feel, overwhelmed, very restricted. Bring somebody in and let them show you where there is room and relief.
So it's interesting. Both you guys have a personal relationship and a business relationship. And so I'm going to testify for those business owners out there. You guys have all had to have difficult conversations with me, right? Meaning Lisa used to come in quarterly basis. We go over the review of my financials. And all of a sudden she says, look, you bleeding cash over here. Do you understand these overruns here? And I'm looking at this thing like, no, I don't. But that's a difficult conversation. And oftentimes, Lisa, we've had the conversation where I had to make tough decisions that after Lisa would come on a quarterly basis, we'd have to streamline some people. So some of my employees were like, oh my God, Lisa's coming. Does that mean that's my job? But realistically, that was one thing we had, because you have to have that difficult conversation. Amy, you had the difficult conversation with me. Is like, wait a minute, you've donated money, you get no tax relief from it. Wait a minute, you have been somewhat of a successful entrepreneur. However, do you understand how much money you're going to give to the state or Washington, D.C.? I think was it 40%? If I died, was going to just go away. And I'm like, what are you doing? And so how do you guys have those difficult conversations when you're looking at somebody's face? And an entrepreneur, we're very hopeful people. We're like, I can do this. What do you mean my money's bleeding? What do you mean when I die, I'm not going to have anything, And those are difficult conversations to have. So Amy, talk to me about that in terms of estate planning, because our business owners need to have those conversations, but that's tough.
The interesting thing is that we are optimistic as people, but fortunately, we have a law firm of where we're able to, one, you've walked in, so you've given, well, except for you, I sort of hunted you down and said, no, bro. But many people don't know what they're expecting when they walk in the door. And so, but they know that they need to do something, but not as much. But because they've given us a window, we build on the relationships that, okay, look, let's think about what are the true harsh realities, as well as how do we want to build it. So a lot of times people come to us to talk about asset protection, as opposed to they really want to talk about dying yet, right? They want to talk about how do we protect our business in such a way so that if someone sues us, we're straight. Right, which is we're glad to help with that too. But we also are thinking about how do we think about this legacy, long-term planning. And one of the things that I wanted us to back up to is thinking about that last conversation we talked about, sort of our solopreneurs. And I want folks to think about, especially entrepreneurs, about how we can position our next folks so that when our grandkids are looking to build a business, that they have that access to capital, because we've built it, right? Even if it was, I talk to this not just but with my entrepreneurs, but anybody who has property, right? So that we're going to think about how do we want to let those folks take some of the equity out of that property that we're passing down, that real estate, so that we can help them do that. So that, in thinking about, most of us don't have someone who can borrow $1 million from our parents to build a business. But a lot of times, we have access to stuff, but we just don't know. But if we can be thoughtful about how we frame and protect stuff so that we can provide it, but we say in our firm, don't give no money away without a manual, right? We put restrictions on everything because we're controlling kind of folk, and professional pessimists. But we can support people to be able to have those multiple generation conversations and access to capital, and that's in the house. The money's in the house. But again, it is the multitude of counsel where there's safety.
Lisa, same thing. You got this entrepreneur who is successful. They got all type of revenue. They won contracts, and you go in there like, I need to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, I like to say numbers tell a story and they don't lie. So I just take it straight to the numbers. What difference does it make if your top line is growing, but your bottom line is bleeding? It makes no difference in the world. It's not helping anybody. And so my job is to come in, to assess, and then to provide you not only with the reality, but once I know where you're trying to go, it is to show you the pathway to get there. And what are some of the things that you may need to consider internally to make some adjustments so that you can achieve those objectives. So once I know exactly where you want to go, and I know, what's happening with your numbers, the conversation may be difficult, but it's easy to have. Many years ago, you brought me in. Your business was growing like crazy, right? Lots of great growth. But what you said to me was, I need somebody to take a look at this because I don't feel like we are keeping as much as we should. And so I came in, I did the assessment, and my job is not to tell you, listen, you need to go fire that person, you need to get rid of that. That's not my job. Yep. My job is to tell you what's going on in the middle, and then let's strategize around what needs to happen. Scaling happens both ways. You scale up, yes, but sometimes you have to scale back in order to scale up. And so the conversation is not difficult to have if I know what you're trying to achieve, right? Because I'm tying the reality of where we are right now to what you're targeting. And then let's create a pathway on how we're going to get there. So it's not a hard conversation. The harder conversation is when I need to have a conversation with you about why you need to get out of your own way. That's a harder conversation to have.
Wow. So say a little bit more about that.
A lot of times we can't see ourselves coming, right? We've already talked about the fact that, we're outward seeing beings. God gave us 2 eyes so we can see outlook, we can see vision, but we can't see ourselves. We can't So a lot of times from a management perspective, we can't see ourselves. We don't know how we're functioning. We don't know how we're being received by others around us. We don't know that we're sitting, behind our desk far too long as business owners. That one of the things I say all the time is the desk is the worst thing you can give a business owner. Because we sit behind it far too long. We can't see some of the things that we're saying. We just can't see it. So having a conversation, I have to have a black coffee conversation with a client in about a week, because I need them to see themselves right now. They are overwhelmed and they're overwhelming their staff. And I need to be able to tell them that, listen, the problems that you're having right now, the things that you're expressing, that you've been communicating, is all because you're in your own way. You just settle down, and let's do a few things to make certain that, we're streamlining, that everybody's on the same page, that we're operating towards the same mission. But really, at the end of the day, it's you. We have to get you out of your own way. That's a harder conversation.
That is. Amy? You got that look.
I keep holding on to that. What we need to do is give people I guess I'm identifying part of these conversations, being that entrepreneur where there's hard conversations. And we've made a lot of transformations over the last year, the COVID reality. And as we look at, in my mind's eye, how we look at where we want to be, we really got to support people to vision. Right. And talk about, it's not a hard conversation if we know the end in mind. It's not a hard conversation if we're committed to that vision. It's one thing to say, yes, I want to live on a yacht, but am I willing to pay the price that it would take to get me to be there? Right. So having the vision and saying, really, do I have this? Like I used to say all the time, I do anything to be that small, but I know the truth is I won't, because I'm not going to stop eating and I'm not going to start working out that way. So being thoughtful about what is it we're willing to pay for the vision that we want to have.
Question for you guys as we sort of wrap up here, and I know Phil's going to jump on a little bit. Two questions I want you guys to end with. A piece of advice to people that are listening, and how can people reach you to help them? So a piece of advice for people that are listening, and then how can they reach you? Lisa, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to say in 3 words, my piece of advice is build legacy now. Just start now. Start putting your plans in place. Start thinking about today, literally today. When you hang up from this conversation, sit down and start thinking about, in 10 years, who am I? Where do I want to be? How much do I want to be worth? Write that down, and then start thinking about the resources that you can leverage to help you get there. That's my best advice. Start today. And in terms of how you can get in touch with us, is that the next question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think we have so many people in this area and throughout the country that need what you're offering. How can they reach you? Sure.
So there's a couple of ways that you can learn a little bit more about us. Certainly it's through our website, which is www.anavo, transformation.com. You can check us out on YouTube. I put a lot of content out on YouTube, and you can find us there. The channel is called Scale to 7 Figures. You can check out my book. It's called Beyond the Plateau, 5 Simple Steps to Scale Your Way to $1 Million Business. But you can also link with me on LinkedIn. I'm Lisa Anderson on LinkedIn.
See, Amy, she said something that really kicks off for you. She said, start leaving a legacy now. And that's a paradigm shift for most people that says, wait a minute, I'm by myself. How can I leave a legacy if I don't have anything to leave? So how would you react to that? Because that really goes into your advice, and how do people reach you?
Right. I wanted to just say ditto to what Lisa said. Build your legacy now, because we talk about the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals, for example. We have what we call a Creating a Legacy Summit, because that's what we talk about. We're actually moving to train our tagline to life and legacy counselors at the Griffin firm, because indeed that's what we're all about. And it is, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. And the reality is, be honest. be vulnerable to secure those counselors, right? Act now. Don't just think about it. We have the paralysis of analysis.
Yeah.
Take those steps to do something, to achieve the goal. I mean, again, I don't care where your vision is today, but invest in yourself to make sure that vision is secured, right? Yeah. So often, I mean, I say we're not the cheapest law firm around, and we don't ever intend to be. But invest in yourself with us or somebody else, but make sure that you have the quality of counselors that you deserve. And you can connect with me on two ways. YourEstatePlanningAttorney.com will connect you to the Griffin firm, and abep.org, and I realize that my virtual background disappeared, but abep.org is ABEPP, Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals.org, where we have virtual conversations monthly on how do we collectively work together to bridge the racial wealth gap.
One of the things that I want to end with, and Phil, I think you're about to pop on, is that I want to make sure my big thing this year has really been about accountability for ourselves as Black folks. Because at the end of the day, this equity conversation is huge. But we have to make sure we're not waiting for someone else to come and help us. You know, if it happens, great, glad you're here. But we have to be accountable for ourselves. And having two great leaders who happen to be women, right? But you guys are great leaders who happen to be women. I don't take that away from you, but I don't want people to sort of say, oh, it's Women Month, so let's put women on. You guys are great in what you do. And I think what you're teaching, what you're providing is so powerful for people to be able to make sure they understand that they have to take accountability to be able to say, wait a minute, God has given me these ears to hear, you know, let me hear what they're trying to teach me. And now let me be accountable and move. Right. And so we're really trying to help our businesses throughout this country, particularly in the nation's capital, but throughout this entire country, think about, I need to move in this space and time that we're in. And so I thank both of you guys, dynamic speakers. I know your schedule is extremely tight, so I appreciate your friendship, but more importantly, I appreciate who you guys are and your commitment to other people, right? Because every time you guys go somewhere and talk to someone and help somebody, you're taking something away from you, from a selfish perspective, but you're planting seeds for the future that's going to be incredibly gross. I really appreciate you guys for what you do here. Please, please, please out there, follow up with these great leaders. Take the opportunity to really learn what they have and join and be a part of what they're doing. Phil, if you're still there, I'm going to have you join and then bring us out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the conversation, everyone. And thank you all for joining us.